Welcome in to the Skol Purple podcast. It is good to be back with you all once again as we are live streaming on the Skol Purple podcast YouTube channel and, of course, posting the audio later on. But it's good to be back. Good to be back talking Vikings, and the draft is less than 30 days away. It's like 25-ish days away, something like that. Not even, maybe. I don't know. It's getting close, Tony, and yeah, it's definitely the talks are heating up. At least rumors, maybe I should say, are heating up for the Vikings and what they're going to do. So it's a fun time of year. One of my favorite times of the year for sure. So it's good to be together and talk about the Vikings. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I got through April Fool's Day relatively unscathed, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, there you
Uh,
go.
I don't know about you. I know you're off in Iowa, but here in Minnesota we had this nasty 3-day snowstorm last week, and so we're finally past that. We're in the mid 40s. I think got up to almost 50 today. Weekend's looking beautiful, so I'm just
Yeah.
excited. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, we had some snow last week, but got through it, and it's all melted already. We got some rain in there too, so starting to see a little green in the grass. It's starting
Yeah.
to feel like baseball season with spring, and of course, the Twins are playing, so got the Twins gear on. You got the Twins hat and the Vikings sweatshirt too to go with it. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a fun
Well,
time of year.
we do know that it's Twins time because I've already seen reports of guys going on injured reserve. So we do know that it is the
That's
regular
right.
season for the Twins.
All right, we got Skolden already ready to go here and help us out here with our first question. So Skolden, appreciate you hopping in.
Yeah. Well,
Um, let's go ahead and just answer his question right away. What do you think there, Tony? Should the Vikings stick and pick or trade up? I like that. Stick and pick or trade up. I don't know if I actually like the Vikings to do it, but what are your thoughts on that?
yeah, I mean, unfortunately, this is going to sound a bit cliche, but it really is just going to depend on how the board unfolds, right? If there's somebody that they absolutely are in love with, that they think could be a franchise changing, most likely quarterback, then I think they've got to try to at least attempt to get up and get him, right? Most
Yeah,
likely that's going to be five, maybe four. But I also am of the mindset that I think the two quarterbacks that are going to be available potentially at that 4 and 5 spot are going to be Drake May, who I've been fairly vocal about in saying that I think he's going to be a bust. I think he's going to be Zach Wilson. So please, for the love of anything, don't give me Drake May. And then the other guy is JJ McCarthy. And I'm a little bit more okay with that pick, if you want to say that. It's just well, there's a lot of unknowns with McCarthy, which is why I'm a little bit more okay with that because we really have to trust in our scouts that say, well, he wasn't really asked to do a lot, but he has all the tools. That's what JJ McCarthy and his trajectory really hinges on, is the fact that the system he was in didn't demand him to showcase all of his tools, and thus we can develop those tools into something viable in the NFL. That's what we have to hope for. So those are the
yep.
options to me. If it was in a perfect world, I hope that for whatever reason, Jaden Daniels has a photo that comes out with him with a gas mask on, and he falls because I would take Jaden Daniels in a heartbeat. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're already 100% sure that Caleb Williams is going to be the number 1 overall pick. I don't think that there's really any question on that at this point. Maybe things will change as we get closer to the draft. Maybe the Bears will say, no, I actually like Jaden Daniels, but I doubt it. I mean, not that they wouldn't like Jaden Daniels, but I think they're going to stick with Caleb Williams. So really, it comes down to those three if the Vikings are trading up. The J.J. McCarthy, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May, as you've already discussed your displeasure for.
Yes.
And by the way, Tony, I know you can't make this announcement yet, but you've got some exciting news at some point. But anyways, in relation to what your hot take there, or I don't know if it's a hot take. I feel like I'm kind of somewhat in the same boat as you, where I'm not so sold on Drake May at this point. Yeah, I think the Vikings. So there was a report yesterday that came out from Dov Kleiman, I think is how you say his name. I don't know if you saw this, Tony, but basically he said, according to a story from Kevin Seifert from ESPN, reports for the Vikings, that the Vikings are preparing for the possibility of trading of standing pat, because if these teams don't decide to give up their pick, what's the plan going to be? So I think Dove kind of blew that out of proportion. I don't think the Vikings are planning now at this point and saying, okay, well, we didn't get our guy, or we didn't get the trade up done, so we're not doing it. I think at this point they're just saying, if it doesn't happen, we are okay with that, because we can roll with Sam Darnold for a year, and we can trade up for somebody else next year, or we can pick somebody at 11 or 23 or later in the draft, perhaps. So I'm actually glad the Vikings are thinking about those things. They should be thinking about those things. If everything else fails, they're not able to come up with the right package. There might be teams, the Vikings may offer 4 first-round picks, who knows, for a pick in the top 5. But if a team likes their future quarterback, they might not agree, So there is that aspect of it, Tony, where I feel like people maybe don't grasp that enough, of like, hey, there is 2 sides to every deal. And you go with the Justin Jefferson thing, of course. Well, why haven't the Vikings signed him? Well, maybe Justin Jefferson has some things, that he wants worked out, and the Vikings have still been trying to work that out on their end. So, there's 2 sides to every story. There's two people that need to make a deal work, 2 teams, whatever you want to say. So I guess I'm glad that the Vikings are at least preparing for a scenario when they're not able to trade up. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Vikings have a lot of options, and we get so laser focused on this quarterback, draft, or the potential quarterbacks in this draft, and us potentially moving up. I just think the tunnel vision, that's the phrase I was looking for, can get a bit more, we're getting distracted. I mean, at the end of the day, distracted from the fact that the Vikings could just as easily stay at 11 if, again, the chips fall where the quarterback that they want isn't there, or quarterbacks that they would want aren't there, and or the amount of capital that's being requested of them to move up is just too great, and it's too detrimental to the organization. Maybe they stick at 11, and then here's the other thing. What if they stick at 11 and decide to prioritize defense or offensive line? I mean, I can't even, I mean, to be honest, that would show me as a fan, as much as we want the sexy pick, right? An actual mature front office that understands that we're trying to build a franchise. The Vikings, it pains me to say this, are not going to win the Super Bowl in 2024. So really, right, what we are trying to build on is 2025 and beyond at this point. So maybe they believe they can get a guy like Michael Penix right?
Yep.
And develop him just as well as a guy that maybe they feel like they would have been stuck with at 5. um and you get to actually save your capital, right? And spend high level capital, meaning draft capital in this sense, on somebody that might be a difference maker this year, like somebody on the defensive line, somebody on the offensive line. I mean, there's some good pieces that are out there. I mean, 11 is not a bad place to pick. So um, here's the other thing too. I mean, the Vikings have other positions they need to prioritize. One of the things that I think people just kind of flies under the radar, people aren't talking about, is the fact that the Vikings should also be looking at running back. Now, I don't think they should be looking at running back in the first round. I'm
Right.
just saying in this draft, they will need to address the running back position. And since running backs at this point are, going for a bag of potato chips, we should be able to find some value in the later rounds. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Vikings spend a couple of picks on running backs. I could see a pair of young backs being taken on days 2 and 3. So, yeah, I just think this team hopefully has the level of foresight to not reach, because I can't do another Christian Ponder era as a Vikings fan. I mean, I'll endure it because in some sick way, I think I enjoy it. But boy, I'm not going to be happy about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think and I think that's kind of the point that they're trying to make too, right? Like, there is a chance that those guys are gone. We're not able to get into the top 4 and all 4 of those quarterbacks are gone. And then what do you do? Like you can't just you can't just reach on a quarterback just because, oh, we need a quarterback. And I don't think the Vikings are going to do that, which is good. We don't need Rick Spielman panic moment again with quarterbacks. And, I'm not here to pick on Rick Spielman because he did a lot of good things for the Vikings as GM, made a lot of great picks and all that, but never could get quarterback right. That was the one bugaboo along with offensive line until the last few years when he drafted O'Neal and Darisaw. But for the longest time, couldn't get that right, and then never got quarterback right. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater, maybe, that could have
Yeah.
been, but obviously it didn't work out. So, yeah, I think Skolden kind of asked the question what you were talking about, and I think he actually had that up. So maybe he was reading minds of like taking Penix, but you probably don't want to take Penix at number 11. By the way, everybody's kind of talking. I guess Penix is probably a late first at best. From a
Pick,
lot of other people's thoughts on it.
pick 23. Pick 23,
Pick
maybe.
23.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I mean, we got another couple of comments. One more from Skolden. I heard a rumor that Vikings might draft a QB in 2025. Yeah, we talked a little bit about that. I think it's good to have options open. Too Evil to Hope's joining and says trade JJ. So appreciate you tuning in. Too Evil to Hope. I don't know if I'm fully ready to do that yet, but at the same time, I get where you're coming from because of the haul that the Vikings could potentially get in return. Like, that's the only real thing that really would draw me to trading JJ, because if you're able to get 2 first round picks or more, which I think, some people would want, or some people want more, and I understand that. But I guess, Tony, what would it take for you to say I'm trading JJ? That's something that we're gonna do right now.
Mm. Oh boy. I mean, a lot. Yeah. I mean, it would need to be a team that I don't think is going to do very well in the next couple of years. And I would probably want,
Probably would have to be an AFC team too. I'm guessing from your
yeah,
thoughts.
two firsts, and we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it would have to be a lot. And the reason why I say that is because twofold. One, he is obviously the best player on the Vikings roster currently, so that's a big ask from a personnel standpoint. Second of all, from a business standpoint, the Wilfs still, want to sell tickets. They want to generate revenue, and it just you're going to really deflate the sales of most, Vikings fans if we don't really have a quarterback and we trade away the best player on the team who happens to be, a dynamic wide receiver. It's going to be pretty hard to sell tickets doing that. So I think from a business perspective, you'd have to have like some pretty wild assurances that trade is going to garner future success. And I mean, you can't guarantee anything, but that's why I say it would need to be a team that you think is going to pick in the top 5 the next 2 years, and then those two, first round picks hopefully are picks that we can leverage, whether that be trading them for even more capital in the future, or even, as someone already mentioned, to maybe look at revisiting the quarterback spot again in a year or two, if whatever we do this year seems to fail.
Well, I like what Too Evil to Hope's saying here, and I think he's probably on the same page as us, but we don't want to reach for a quarterback at 11, though, right? Too Evil to Hope, like that's where we don't want to be Rick Spielman and draft Christian Ponder. We were just discussing that. I don't know if you got in at that time, but if the top 4 quarterbacks are off the board and you're left with Michael Penix Jr. and Bo Nix, which it kind of bugs me, Tony. Like, if there's anybody that I'm not as big of a fan of compared to Drake May, like, I mean, I'd take Drake May over Bo Nix, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think Bo Nix is, based on what I've heard, is kind of a system quarterback, and he was just able to thrive in the system that he had in Oregon. He wasn't all that great in Auburn, I don't think. I mean, maybe somebody could prove me wrong with his stat line, but I don't know. I just don't know. I think JJ McCarthy and Jaden Daniels are probably my 2 favorite quarterbacks, at least in the top 5. I mean, I do like Caleb Williams. I loved Caleb Williams last year. I maybe have gone down a little further on him since last year. But yeah, I of the top consensus quarterbacks, I'd say JJ McCarthy or Jaden Daniels. He says Bo Nix was the best third down QB last season. That would be nice. I do think J.J. McCarthy has a lot of the qualities to be able to do that too. He's got the ability to scramble. And I think with the weapons the Vikings have, it would make things pretty easy, you would think, or at least easier. Tony, I don't know how many people have actually brought this up, but I'm curious to see if the Vikings dip in on the supposedly pretty rich tight end class this year. I actually, with TJ Hawkinson's injury, I can't talk. But with his injury, I'm not so sure he's going to be ready to go. Maybe not even in the first month of the season. I mean, maybe people will come up and say that he's going to be great, ready to go week 1, but I have a tough time believing that. And even if he is, I don't mind the idea of trying to go get a tight end from this class. J.J. McCarthy has 1 300-yard passing game. Yeah, I get what you're saying there, Too Evil to Hope, but he really hasn't had to have that many 300-yard passing games. I think that is a little irrelevant because of being at Michigan. I think he's more than capable of doing it. It's just, when you have Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum and the best offensive line in the country, what do you even need to pass the ball for 300 yards for? I get what you're saying though. But yeah, Bowers, I really like Bowers, the tight end from Georgia. I think he's going to be really solid. But of course, I said that about Kyle Pitts too, and that didn't turn out well. But
Yeah.
or at least hasn't yet. So
Well, we'll see how Pitts does with old Kirk Cousins, because Cousins really likes to sling it to his tight ends, and it could have been that he was not utilized correctly, or the quarterback play in Atlanta has been pretty rough.
right,
Let's just face the facts. And for all of Kirk Cousins' faults, he's not a bad quarterback. And I've never claimed on this show that Kirk Cousins was a bad quarterback. I have just purely stated that Kirk Cousins was never an elite quarterback. That's where, and I will die on that hill every day. But no, I don't mind them looking at tight end. I think again, it's just going to depend on how the
I'm not
board.
I'm not saying to even do it in the first round. I just mean in
Yeah,
general. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, because who's our number two? Johnny Munt, right? Right now.
I think they still have Josh Oliver, but I'm not sure.
Okay. I know Munt re-signed.
Yep, Munt
Um, you
re-signed
know,
for sure.
yeah. So it's to be seen. It would be nice. I mean, the nice thing is about getting a rookie for a couple of reasons. One is there's always the potential that you snag somebody that can be a difference maker, but even taking that away, it's then just purely depth and cost, right? A rookie's not going to cost very much, and you are providing more depth of the position. So, and you're rolling the dice because maybe you do strike gold, and you've got a guy that could potentially contend for that starting spot at a much cheaper price. Not that I don't like Hawkinson, I think he fits very well, but to your point, we are dealing with an injury now that might linger into this season, and then we kind of have to think about, really again, this team is trying to build for 2025. So
Yep.
what does it look like next off season? I think that we have to start thinking about that too. I hate talking like that because the season hasn't even started yet, and I will be just as excited as everybody else. I hope that Sam Darnold just is like comes out of nowhere and it's like Case Keenum all over again. I would love that. I would absolutely be thrilled with that. I'm just saying, in my heart of hearts, it's easier to prepare for the more likely scenario, which is the Vikings probably end up somewhere between 5 and 9 wins. There might be in the mix if they get towards the upper ceiling of that, as far as playoffs are concerned. But I do think they're probably more of a 500 to slightly below 500 ball club this next season.
Got former contributor David popping in here. We've got Too Evil to Hope and Skolden still making some comments. Appreciate all of you getting your thoughts in. I would tolerate taking McCarthy at 11, but not moving up to get him. Okay. All right.
Sure.
Fair enough.
And you don't know how the board's going to fall. I mean, the biggest thing, if you missed it, my comment earlier with McCarthy, is that a lot hinges on what we don't know. Because what we're being told from the analysts and scouts is that McCarthy has a lot of tools. He just wasn't asked to necessarily go into the full, tool bag, if you will, when he was at Michigan. And why I like him over, like, let's say a guy like Drake May, who I am very strongly against drafting, is that they basically said, to May, you got full reign to do what you need to do. And I mean, the guy just doesn't. I think the big thing with May, and then I'll get off of it because I could talk all night about Drake May and how much I don't like him. I mean, he might be a nice guy, I just don't want him as a quarterback. Is that when he is under pressure, he can't handle it. And you can see the footwork gets sloppy. He starts shifting around in the pocket. If his first read isn't there, he struggles. Like, it's just all the telltale signs that these things will not translate well at the NFL level. Could he get hooked up with a good organization and coach that could maybe, help him in that regard? Sure. But I don't know. I just don't see flashes. I see talent. That's there. but I don't see flashes of like, oh man, this guy could really be a difference maker. Because most of the time, the difference makers, it's in those moments when they are under a lot of pressure that you go, ooh, man, they made something out of nothing there. You don't see that a lot with Drake May. The play breaks down, he freaks out, he throws a bad pass. Most of his interceptions came when he was under pressure. He was chucking. And, I don't know if that's what he was asked to do. I don't know. I'm not in the room. But at the end of the day, from an eye test, it looks like a guy that's going to get drafted by somebody. And I don't know. For Patriots fans, after having to deal with Tom Brady.
All right. Looks like we lost Tony there for a second. Back in.
Can you hear me okay? All right. Sorry about
I
that. I didn't
got
know
you.
I was gone.
You weren't gone for very long.
I was just going to say, I hope the Patriots, in some sick way, I hope the Patriots draft Drake May, because they'll go from Mac Jones bust to Drake May bust. And it'll be like, oh, well, I'm glad you guys had your dynasty run, because welcome back to obscurity, New England Patriots. For those that are my age and older, they remember that New England Patriots were completely irrelevant before Tom Brady came along.
Yeah, well, and I think in terms of pressure, I don't know how much you care about quarterbacks under pressure. I think it's an important thing, to say the least, because if you're not good under pressure, then that tells a lot about you as a player and how you will fare in the NFL, I think.
Yeah. May was very bad in that regard.
So, if I remember correctly, I want to say that maybe Jaden Daniels was the one that was really good under pressure last year. I don't know the numbers, pressure numbers. I was trying to find it, but I don't think I can find it right now. But he, I believe, was really good under pressure last year, from what I remember, at the college level for LSU. But he has got a great deep ball. There's no question about that. And I think, if you get a guy like that in here, into Minnesota, into Minneapolis, to TCO Performance Center, for Kevin O'Connell to mold, I think that kind of guy can really take off when he gets to the NFL, because he's got the talent. Just a few things, clean up a few things that Kevin O'Connell can help with, kind of mold him a little bit into the quarterback that we saw last year, but to an NFL level, I guess. So yeah, I think I would take Daniels over McCarthy just based on talent, Tony.
Yeah.
I think that he's got more talent than McCarthy, but
100%.
it's not that's not to say that McCarthy's untalented, right? It's just that I just think that Jaden Daniels' talent is off the charts. I think he is up there and maybe even surpasses Caleb Williams in terms of overall talent. It's pretty close, I think. I think it's pretty close, just based on athleticism, but also the ability to, make good decisions and, throw the ball deep and under pressure. I don't know the stats. I guess I thought I saw that at one point, that he was one of the best under pressure quarterbacks last year. But yeah, I don't think Jaden is probably going to fall. Too Able to Hope just mentioned that. But he also says May sent his hackers to stop Tony from speaking the truth.
Exactly. They're out to get me, man.
That's right. That's right. It's asked of McCarthy to actually trust he can get it done. That Michigan defense and run game made his life easy. Yeah. I don't think anybody would debate that. Definitely made his life easy, but when he was asked to, he delivered. He delivered with a national championship. And you know what? When he comes to Minnesota, I think his life's going to be pretty easy too. I mean, The offensive line's not as good as it was in college for him because of the interior of our offensive line for the Vikings is not as good. But overall, I mean, you got the weapons if assuming Justin Jefferson's a part of the offense in 2024, which I think he will be. I know you said that earlier too, Evil to Hope, that you think that maybe he could be on the move. I don't think that's going to happen, but you bring in Justin Jefferson or you bring in Daniels or McCarthy, whoever it is, but McCarthy, I know we were talking about him, and he's going to have the ability to pick and choose who he wants to throw to. I mean, he's got Addison, he's got Jefferson, he's got Aaron Jones coming out of the backfield. He's got T.J. Hawkinson, potentially a rookie tight end or a rookie receiver. That's another loaded rookie receiver class to go along with it. You got the bookend left and right tackles. Now, I think the Vikings do need to work on the interior of the offensive line, and I know Too Evil to Hope's talking about that. But I think a lot of the pieces would be there for McCarthy. And again, any quarterback that the Vikings would draft to succeed pretty much immediately.
Yeah. Well, and the biggest thing is that, again, the hope is that they can sit. I really and truly believe that the Vikings will weather some pretty poor quarterback play in order to protect, their rookie, whoever that might be. I know I did a guest spot on another podcast, NFL Outdated. Great crew. Go follow them, their stuff. Make sure you like and subscribe to us too. Come on. But I was on there, I think, a few weeks ago, and one of their other guests, who happened to be a Packer fan, said, "There's no way the Vikings draft a quarterback and he doesn't start at least." He said something like 12 games, and I was just like, I think probably the reverse. I mean, I would be pretty surprised and in a way disappointed if the Vikings were to fold under the pressure of, well, we need to start this kid, because that was the whole reason to get Darnold. I think if you don't
Right.
if you don't want him to sit, then don't go get Darnold. Just let the guy, then take a quarterback, let him start, let him do what he's got to do. But if you're gonna take Darnold, then let him be the bridge that he's meant to be. I don't care if we go through a Josh Dobbs experiment, where things get kind of ugly. The whole point is not about this year. It's about the future years. It's about 2025. I think that the Vikings hopefully are mature enough to say, look, we might be 1-6. I'm just throwing this out there. We're not starting our rookie just because. Like, let's let him develop. I could see whoever it might be. I'll concede that I could see maybe them starting the rookie if, let's say, the sky falls and the season's just completely falling apart. Maybe the rookie starts the last like 2 games of the season just to get a little taste. I could see that, and I'd be fine with that. But really, anything more than that, it just, to me, would feel like an organization that has lost its vision. Right now, what I appreciate is it seems like they have a vision, and I hope they stick to it.
Yeah, and Too Evil to Hope kind of even expanded on what you were saying there. If we wreck the rookie quarterback we draft, starting him too early, KOC should be fired, and I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree. And I think Kevin O'Connell is definitely smart enough to know if it's too early to start a quarterback. I think he's got a good eye for it, but if for whatever reason, he would prove to, have made a mistake, then yeah, I'd say that's worth a fireable offense in my opinion, and especially if he opined for the guy that they drafted too, which I'm guessing is going to be the case, because I'm guessing they're not going to just draft Michael Penix and say, well, here you go, like he's going to have a say in it. I mean, maybe he won't have he's not going to have the final say because Kwesi's got the final say, but they're not going to just draft. And if they do, then they both should be fired, I think. They're not going to just draft somebody, and just say, well, here you go, good luck, So I think you're right there. Too Evil to Hope. And this is important. This decision that the Vikings make or don't make on the quarterback is going to make or break the Kevin O'Connell Kwesi era. So I think that it's just huge, very imperative that the Vikings get this right. And we've got Mr. Vocal Vike, Purple Pocket, in the building. Appreciate him tuning in. He's been a good friend, good buddy over the last couple of years of doing this show. So we appreciate him hopping in, and got plenty of people getting their takes in. So appreciate that as well. We're talking a lot about the Vikings trading up potentially or staying pat at 11. What are your thoughts? Please go ahead and type those in to the comment section if you haven't already. Give us your thoughts. Rap. I'm sure you've already given your thoughts on your channel, but if you have any more thoughts you want to talk about the Vikings drafting your favorite quarterback, whoever that is, whatever. David, if you have anything to add, appreciate your thoughts too, and anybody else that wants to chime in. So, Tony, I guess any other thoughts on any of these other quarterbacks? I know Too Evil to Hope asked about Michael Penix Jr. I do like Michael Penix. I really do. He showed to me in the college football playoff that he can really play, and I wouldn't mind that. Is it my favorite pick? I think Jaden Daniels is probably my favorite pick.
Yeah.
But I'd roll with it. I mean, I'm not a big fan of watching left-handed quarterbacks. It's just a thing I've had for the longest time. It's just an eyesore for me. But that man can sling it. He has got a rocket of an arm. He's more of a pocket passer, which I'm not such a big fan of anymore. But if you have a decent enough offensive line, he'll be fine. And I think he actually ran faster at the 40-yard dash time than people thought he would. So sneaky athletic ? But we got Rap talking trade up. That's what his thoughts are. Jaden Daniels, and if not, JJ McCarthy. Yeah, I feel you. And we know that Too Evil to Hope hates JJ McCarthy, doesn't like Drake May. So does Too Evil to Hope like anybody or anything? That is the question we're trying to answer here today. But no, appreciate his thoughts. He does like Penix, and he does like Bo Nix, he said earlier. So
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I guess your thoughts there, Tony, on what we were talking about there.
yeah, I mean, I just think the biggest thing, and we can beat this thing into the ground, but the Vikings can't. I mean, they can afford to miss because there are some nuance to them being able to maybe redeem themselves in a couple of years. So I don't think it would be a franchise killer for too long. But I think there is a ripple effect, and one of those being something that got brought up just a little bit ago, which is that we still have to sign Justin Jefferson, and much like our friend Stefon Diggs, who finds himself now in Houston, I feel as if Justin is not so much like, I'm sure he wants to get paid, he wants to get the bag, but at the end of the day, he wants to win. I mean, the guy is a competitor, and so I just think that if we can't prove that we're going to be somewhat competitive, or there isn't a clear vision to be competitive, it might be hard to retain the services of Mr. Jefferson. And boy, oh boy, would it be rough to essentially hang on to him so long that we get absolutely nothing in return. And that is the risk that you play by not trading him and being in this weird pickle of purgatory, quarterback purgatory, if you will. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. But yeah, a little segue there for you, a little softball that I teed up for
That's
you there,
right.
Carson.
You did. You teed it up very beautifully, and I don't hit a softball very much or very often, but I decided to hit this one, and here we go. So yeah, Stephon Diggs traded to Houston. You know, I kind of was at one point a person that was like, you know, I get why Diggs is doing what he's doing, but I'm kind of at the point, Tony, and maybe I'm off base here, but I just kind of feel like he really is all about himself. I just really have that feeling from him. He's competed well with Buffalo as a guy that's gone to the AFC Championship game with Josh Allen. I just, I don't know. I just have a really tough time not seeing that he is selfish in being wanting to be traded and wanting to get out of Buffalo after earlier wanting to get out of Minnesota. You know, I guess what are your thoughts on that? I think Buffalo did the right thing because again, it sounds like he didn't want to play for him. I mean, we haven't heard that I guess yet, but that's kind of the vibe that we kind of got. So, what are your thoughts?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a two-faceted answer here. In regards to just Diggs in general, I don't disagree with your take that Diggs is, I think he is a bit of a selfish guy. But I think he's selfish in the sense that he is very, very invested in winning. And I think he is not so much tied or bogged down by loyalty to a team or teammates. And that's not to say that I'm sure he's got good friends that he's made on the teams he's played for, but I think when it comes right down to it, he wants to win, and he feels that he could be a top end contributor on a contending team, and I think he believes, which I can't necessarily disagree with, that Buffalo has kind of, they've kind of taken a step back. They've regressed, especially over the last couple of years. Yeah, I don't know. I think it'd be hard to really argue against that. Yeah, I mean, do I think it's for himself? 1,000%. But it's a little bit different than like the cash grabs that you might see around the league. I don't think he would chase dollars as much as he's trying to chase championships. And he does get a level of respect from me because of that. As somebody who's played organized sports, like we all want to win, and everybody's got different motivations, and that one feels a little less gross than some of the other motivations that I've certainly been privy to. So there's that. The other thing was, did Buffalo do the right thing? Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, they made the same decision that the Vikings did, which is that you've got a guy who is clearly disgruntled with your organization, with the moves you've made. Again, it probably isn't personal. I don't know. I mean, I have no idea what the dynamics are between him and the other players. All I know is that most likely he wasn't going to be a positive force in that locker room had he had been around, and that's just not good. Not good for a team that's trying to find its footing, and that's where Buffalo's at right now. I mean, I don't know who's Josh Allen going to throw to. Dawson Knox. I mean, Gabe Davis is gone. Diggs is gone. I mean, I don't know who's left. I mean,
Khalil Shakir is gone.
I'm not being completely serious, but kind of. I mean, it's so. At the end of the day, good for Houston too. I mean, I think Diggs will be a good weapon for Stroud. I guess the hope for me in that scenario is that Diggs also will not be shy about showing his frustration if he feels that Stroud is not feeding him like he would like. But hopefully, again, that's a harmonious relationship. They are in the AFC, so I have less of a horse in the race with the Texans. I think it's a good story with CJ Stroud. I was pulling for them in the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
Good for them. I think great move for Houston, and they didn't have to give up a ton. I mean, I thought it was pretty fair for what they gave up. So all parties involved, I think, was the right move.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that he doesn't have the right to go somewhere where he wants to be able to win. But I guess my thought is Josh Allen is a quarterback where he gives you the ability to be in that competition window pretty regardless of the roster around him. Obviously, you don't want to just throw out a crappy roster around him, but you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
he's he's not on that Patrick Mahomes level, but he's kind of like a step or so below that, where he can take a team to the playoffs that's not maybe expected to get there because of his talent with his arm and his running ability. So I guess I was surprised to see that he wanted out of a situation with a top 5 type of QB in Josh Allen. Obviously, the situation in Houston is fantastic. I mean, you can't ask for much more than this if you're Stephon Diggs. But I don't know. I go back and forth on it. Um, yeah,
I,
it's.
I
I
would
think
liken
I
it to
think
this.
Houston. I think Houston is going to be in the AFC Championship game. Unless somehow they end up having to play Kansas City beforehand, they're going to be in the AFC Championship game. I would be, at this point, pretty shocked if they weren't.
Yeah. I would liken it to this, Carson. Diggs to me seems like a he is the NFL receiver version of whatever a serial dater is. So he's really excited at the beginning. The honeymoon period's awesome, but he gets bored relatively quickly, and then he's ready for something new in short order when things get a little boring. So I think he saw Buffalo trending in the wrong direction, and that was enough for him to say, I need to change scenery.
Yep. This is a good comment here from Too Evil to Hope. He says Stroud is a beast, which we both sat here last year, Tony, at this time of year, and we both thought that Stroud wasn't going to be that good. I'll admit it, I was wrong. Like at this point, at least, his rookie year was fantastic. One of the better rookie years of a quarterback in NFL history.
Yep.
Great dude too. But I like what Too Evil to Hope says here. He says if the Vikings can pull off what the Texans are doing, drafting and trading, our future looks bright. And I 1000% agree with him on that. Building a foundation with rookies and younger players. And then this year, they were able to supplement that with adding to that young core by getting Stephon Diggs, by going and getting Danielle Hunter, and getting some of those other players around those younger players. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, the big thing is you got to hit on that pick, because
right.
if you don't hit on that pick, we all know how important that quarterback position is. So I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. If you're a football fan and have been for more than 5 minutes, you understand how important it is to have a competent quarterback, and certainly somebody that looks like they could be a franchise quarterback. That is huge.
All right, last conversation, I think, Tony, unless you have something else to add after I'm done here, but state of the Vikings roster. So basically, what I'm wanting to discuss in this little segment of our show here is, do you feel like the Vikings roster is at a state right now where they could make the playoffs? Or where do you feel like this team is? I know earlier you said this team's not winning a Super Bowl in 2024, and I think most of us would agree with that. I'm in that same boat with you there. But in your opinion, do you think that the Vikings roster is in a place right now without knowing what they're going to draft, without knowing any other future additions before the season begins? Do you feel like the Vikings are in a position coming up in 2024 to at least make a run for the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they could be good enough to be in the mix. If Darnold is serviceable, look, the Vikings aren't a bad team. I mean, they've got to figure out what they're going to do at the running back position. Offensively, that's important. I think it was brought up earlier about the interior offensive line. That's an area of concern. But receiving core is good, very good. The tight end position, we'll see if this injury lingers and for how long. But Hawkinson's very good. The defense, clearly they've been putting an emphasis on getting better on defense with the pickups that they've had this offseason via free agency. So I think that there is a good roster here. The biggest thing is they need consistency at that quarterback position. And look, do I think that it's possible that Sam Darnold could pull off some Case Keenum-esque run? While very unlikely, of course it's possible. So would I love it? 1,000%. But I don't think it's very likely. I think that the team is it's not going to be an easy out. I think this team will be competitive. Unless, barring injuries, we don't know about those. But I think the team will be competitive enough week in, week out. I just don't. I could see them. Unfortunately, I could see them being one of those teams that loses a lot of close games this year. So again, I think my range of where I put the Vikings, I like ranges. I would say floor, probably 5 wins, ceiling again 9 wins. So somewhere between 5 and 9 wins. If they meet that ceiling, that does put them in the mix. If you're 9 and 8, that's a potential playoff spot.
Well, Tony, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the Vikings are not used to being in close games. So
No, not at all. And I mean, who knows? Look, I'm not about to try to get in a war with all the Kirk lovers out there. And I don't even claim to be a Kirk hater, but when when we needed Kirk the most, there were a few moments where he stepped up, but there were a lot of chips that had to fall correctly for a lot of those wins to take place. So.
he always steps up at the negotiating table. That's for sure.
No, that
No
he
doubt
does.
about that.
He throws past the sticks when it
That's
comes
right.
to his contracts. Well, I can tell you
When
that much.
it when it's the end of the season of negotiating a contract, he's not showing 5 yards short of the sticks. That's for
No,
sure.
yeah, nope.
All right. Yeah, I kind of am in that same ballpark with you. I think 5 wins, that's probably a really good floor. I would say currently as the roster is now, again, this is without any added draft picks or anything else. I'd say they're probably topped out at 8 wins. I don't know if I could see them getting 9 or more. I will say this though, the schedule should be more favorable. I guess I haven't even looked at the schedule. Who's on the schedule for this year, but it should be more favorable other than the division. Like that might actually be the worst part of the schedule this year, but
Yeah. Well, I can tell you we don't play the Chargers.
okay.
The one team I know where we don't play, mainly because I'm scared to death that Harbaugh is going to make us feel really dumb about not taking him on as a coach. So we'll
Yeah.
see. Yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, and I don't know if that will be a wrong sentiment once Kevin O'Connell and Jim Harbaugh's careers are done, but who knows? I hope I'm wrong. I love Kevin O'Connell, man. He's
Yeah.
such a good dude. He seems like anyway, and so yeah. By the way, Wes Phillips got suspended for 3 weeks without pay. Perfect timing just before the draft, so he'll be back before the draft. So it's kind of like I don't even know if you could call it a slap on the wrist, even Tony. It's kind of like, yeah, here you go, see you later.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah. My goodness. Yeah, I did see that. I had to almost reread it because I thought, oh, is he suspended for like the first 3 weeks of the season? No,
3 weeks
no.
right now.
Yeah, just 3 weeks right now. So basically, it's a little bit like when my boss says, "Hey, we're not going to come into the office for the next 3 weeks," and I go, "Oh, so the 3 days I might have gone into the office."
Yeah, right. There you go.
So
There you go. All right. Well, anything else, Tony, before we wrap things up here tonight?
no, not nothing on my end. Just excited for getting closer to the draft. Excited for the Vikings season to hopefully keep inching closer. Then we've got mini camp and regular training camp, and then in between all that, we actually have a twin season to semi pay attention to until we can't stand it anymore. So excited about that. Glenn Taylor is holding the Timberwolves hostage, so that's another thing I'm keeping an eye on. So just
Yeah.
lots of fun things. But yeah, Skol bikes ready to go. This is probably one of the more exciting things I've got going on for me is just thinking about my bikes, and I just love talking football. Even though it's April, doesn't matter. It's always football season around my parts.
There you go. All right. Well, thanks for joining Tony and I on the Skull Purple podcast, and look forward to talking with you guys very soon once again. And until that time, as always, Skull.
Let's go.